I never thought I would be making room in my closet for someone else's shirts again. Not at 62. Not after everything. I had lived alone for 6 years by then. 6 years of quiet mornings. 6 years of eating whatever I wanted for dinner, sometimes just crackers and soup, without explaining myself to anyone. 6 years of sleeping in the middle of the bed, arms stretched out, taking up all the space I had earned. I liked my life. I really did. So when my daughter called me that spring and said, "Mom, Robert seems serious about you. Have you two ever talked about living together?" I laughed. Not a small laugh, a real one, the kind that makes your eyes water. "Absolutely not," I told her, and I meant it. Robert and I had met the old-fashioned way, I suppose, through a mutual friend at a church potluck dinner. He had brought a peach cobbler. I had brought nothing because I had forgotten it was a potluck until I was already in the parking lot. So I pretended I had simply come to enjoy the company. He sat across from me at one of those long folding tables. He was quiet, not shy, just quiet. There is a difference. Shy people seem uncomfortable with silence. Robert seemed to live inside it comfortably, like a man who had made peace with a lot of things. We talked for maybe 20 minutes that evening, about nothing important. The weather, the cobbler, whether the church needed new ceiling fans. When I got home, I thought about him for a moment. Then I went to bed. I did not expect anything, but he called. 3 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, he asked if I would like to get coffee sometime. I almost said no, not because I disliked him, but because saying yes felt like opening a door I had gotten very comfortable keeping closed. I said yes anyway. Something in his voice, steady, unhurried, made it easy. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became long phone calls. Long phone calls became weekend drives with no particular destination. We would just get in the car and go somewhere. Sometimes we talked the whole time. Sometimes we drove in silence, watching the countryside pass, and it felt completely natural. I had never had that with anyone before, that easy silence. My first husband, God rest him, had been a wonderful man in many ways, but silence made him nervous. He always needed noise, the television, the radio, conversation. If a room got quiet, he filled it. I spent 31 years in a house full of noise. I loved him, I did, but after he passed, the quiet did not feel like emptiness to me. It felt like rest. So the idea of bringing someone new into that quiet life, someone with habits and opinions and a whole history I did not fully know, terrified me more than I ever admitted out loud. Robert had been married before too, 24 years. His wife had left, not because of anything dramatic, he told me once, on a rainy evening when we were sitting on my porch, just because they had slowly become two strangers sharing a house. He said it without bitterness, just a kind of tired understanding. We both waited too long to say what was wrong, he said. By the time we tried to fix it, there was nothing left to fix. I remember nodding, watching the rain. I understood more of that than I let on. He never pushed. That was the thing about Robert. He never once made me feel rushed or pressured. He did not drop hints about the future. He did not ask where things were going. He just showed up, consistently, kindly. He remembered that I liked my coffee with exactly 1.5 spoons of sugar. He remembered that I got headaches in loud restaurants, so he always chose quiet ones. He remembered the name of my childhood dog, which I had mentioned once, briefly, 4 months earlier. Small things, but after years of feeling invisible in small ways, small things meant everything. Still. Moving in together was a different conversation entirely. It was actually his lease ending that started it. His apartment building was being converted, the whole thing, and he had 60 days to find somewhere new. I watched him try not to make it my problem. He mentioned it once, casually, and then never brought it up again. I brought it up. I still do not fully know why. Maybe it was a practical decision. Maybe it was something braver than that. You could stay here, I said, for a while you figure things out. He looked at me, really looked at me. Are you sure? He asked. I was not sure at all, but I nodded. The first week was the strangest of my life. Not bad, just strange. There were 2 coffee cups on the counter instead of 1. There were shoes by the door that were not mine. There was someone else breathing in the house at night. I lay awake that first night listening to the unfamiliar sounds. The way he turned over in the guest room. The creak of the floor when he got up for water at 2 in the morning. I stared at the ceiling and thought, what have I done? Maybe you have felt something like that too. That feeling of choosing something good and then immediately wondering if you were brave enough to keep choosing it. I did not know the answer yet. But morning came, and he made breakfast without being asked. Eggs and toast set quietly on the table. A small glass of orange juice. He did not make a fuss of it. He just did it. And I sat down, and I ate. The second week was easier than the first. Not because everything was perfect, it was not, but because I stopped waiting for something to go wrong. That was the habit I had built over 6 years of living alone, a kind of quiet guardedness. I had learned to depend on myself for everything, the leaky faucet, the grocery list, the loneliness at Christmas. I had built a life that worked, small, steady, and entirely mine. And now there was someone inside it. Someone who left the cabinet door open every single morning. I noticed it on day 3, the cabinet above the coffee maker. He would get his mug and just leave it open. Not wide open, just slightly, like he had started to close it and then forgotten. It sounds so small, I know it does. But I stood in my kitchen that morning staring at that open cabinet, and I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like a reminder. A reminder that sharing space with another person means sharing their careless little habits too. The ones they do not even know they have. I closed it without saying anything. The next morning, it was open again. I closed it again. This went on for 11 days. I did not bring it up because I felt foolish. What kind of woman gets unsettled by a cabinet door? But it was not really about the cabinet. I knew that even then. It was about the adjustment, about learning to live inside a life that now had edges and corners I had not put there myself. Robert, for his part, seemed remarkably unbothered by the whole arrangement. He settled in gently, like a man who had learned not to take up more space than he was given. He kept his things tidy. He never complained. He watched his programs quietly in the evenings and always asked before changing the temperature on the thermostat. That actually made me laugh the first time. "Robert, you do not need to ask me about the thermostat." He smiled. "I just did not want to assume." I looked at him for a moment. "How long were you going to keep asking?" "Indefinitely," he said, completely serious. I laughed again, a real laugh, the kind I had not expected to have that evening. My friend Dorothy came over for lunch about 3 weeks in. Dorothy has known me for over 30 years. She sat at my kitchen table, looked around the house slowly, and then looked at me with an expression I can only describe as carefully controlled excitement. "So," she said, "how is it?" "Fine," I told her. "Just fine?" "It is an adjustment," I said. She nodded slowly, stirring her tea. Then she said, "You know what your problem is, Helen? You are waiting for it to feel like a mistake so you can say you knew it would." I wanted to argue with her, but Dorothy has a gift for saying the true thing in the plainest possible way, and the true thing usually takes a moment to land before you can properly deny it. I changed the subject. She let me, but I thought about it for the rest of the day. There was an evening in that 3rd week that I still think about sometimes. I had been on the phone with my son David. He lives in another state. We talk every Sunday without fail. But that Thursday he called because he had heard through his sister that Robert had moved in. He was polite about it. David is always polite. But I could hear something underneath the politeness. A careful worry, the kind children carry when they are not sure their parent is making a wise decision. "I just want to make sure you are okay, Mom," he said. "I am okay," I told him. "You would tell me if you weren't?" "David," I said quietly, "I am 62 years old." There was a pause. "I know," he said. "I know, Mom. I know," I said back. We did not need to finish the sentence. That is the thing about children who love you. Sometimes you are both just carrying the same worry from different sides. After I hung up, I sat in the living room for a while without turning on any lights. The sun was going down. The room went slowly orange, then gray. Robert came in, saw me sitting in the dimness, and did not ask what was wrong. He just sat down in the armchair across from me and was quiet. After a few minutes he said, "David?" "Yes," I said. He nodded. That was all. But somehow it was enough. That he knew. That he did not try to fix it or talk me out of whatever I was feeling. He just sat with me in the gray room while the day ended. Maybe you have had someone like that at some point in your life. Someone who understood that sometimes you do not need words. You just need another person in the room, being still alongside you. I had forgotten what that felt like. The cabinet door, I should tell you, came to a resolution in its own way. One morning, I believe it was a Saturday, I came into the kitchen and found a small sticky note on the inside of the cabinet door. In Robert's handwriting, which is neat and slightly old-fashioned, it said simply, "Sorry about this." I stood there in my bathrobe reading that little note, and something in me, some last bit of stiffness I had been holding, just softened. I did not throw the note away. I do not know why. I folded it and put it in the small dish on the counter where I keep rubber bands and spare buttons and other things I am not ready to get rid of. That afternoon I baked a pie. I do not even remember deciding to. I just found myself doing it. Apple with brown sugar and cinnamon, the kind my mother used to make on Saturdays when I was a girl. Robert came into the kitchen while it was in the oven and stopped walking. He just stood there, eyes closed, breathing in. "That smell," he said, "that is the best thing." I smiled and did not say anything, but I felt something settle inside me, quietly, like a door closing gently on its own. By the second month, something had shifted. I could not point to the exact moment it happened. There was no single day I woke up and thought, yes, this is right now. It was more like the way seasons change. You do not see it happening. And then one morning, the light is different. The air is different. And you realize autumn has arrived without announcing itself. That was how it felt. We had developed a rhythm by then, small, ordinary, unremarkable to anyone watching from the outside. But to me, after 6 years of mornings that belonged entirely to silence, these small routines felt like something I had not known I was missing. He woke up earlier than me, always had. By the time I came downstairs, the coffee was already made. Not poured, he never presumed to know exactly when I would come down. Just made and waiting. The kitchen warm, the smell of it reaching me at the top of the stairs. I would come down in my robe and slippers. He would be at the kitchen table with his newspaper, an actual printed newspaper, which I found quietly charming. He would look up. I would pour my coffee. We would exchange maybe 10 words. "Good morning. Sleep well. It looks like rain." And then we would sit together in that easy quiet that I had come to love about him from the very beginning. Simple, steady, hours. But life, of course, does not stay simple for long. It was a Tuesday evening when the first real difficulty came. Not a fight exactly, something quieter and harder than a fight. His daughter called. Her name is Patricia. She lives about 4 hours away. I had not met her yet. We had spoken briefly on the phone once, a polite and carefully neutral conversation that told me very little except that she was watching the situation closely. I was in the other room, but the house is not large. I could hear Robert's side of the conversation without meaning to. His voice, which is normally so even and calm, had a tightness in it I had not heard before. "Patricia, I understand your concern." A pause. "I am not saying that. I am saying that I am happy." Another pause, longer this time. "I am not asking for your permission. I am telling you how things are." He did not raise his voice, but there was something in those words, "I am not asking for your permission," that made me set down my book and stare at the wall. When he came back into the living room, he sat down heavily and rubbed his face with both hands, the way men do when they are tired of something that has been going on for a long time. "I am sorry about that," he said. "You do not need to apologize," I told him. "She worries," he said, not making excuses for her, just explaining. "I know," I said. "David worries too." He looked at me. "Are we just two people whose children think we have lost our minds?" I considered that for a moment. "Probably," I said. He laughed. Just a short, tired laugh, but real. That night I lay awake longer than usual, not because I was upset, but because that phone call had reminded me of something I had been quietly setting aside. The fact that Robert and I were not just two people. We were two people who came with histories, with children who had opinions, with lives that had already been fully lived once and were now, somehow, being lived again in a new shape. Patricia did not know me. She only knew that her father, who had been hurt before, who had spent years rebuilding himself into someone steady and whole, had moved in with a woman she had never properly met. From where she stood, I understood her worry. But from where I stood, lying in my bed, listening to the quiet house, thinking about the coffee waiting for me every morning, and the sticky note still folded in the dish on the counter, I also knew that what was happening here was not reckless. It was careful, and chosen, and real. I called my daughter the next morning, not to report anything, just to talk. She asked how things were going, and I told her, really told her, more than I usually do, about the rhythm we had found, about the phone call with Patricia, about the way I had felt stiff and guarded at first and was slowly loosening. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mom, do you know what I noticed the last time I came to visit?" "What?" I asked. "You were laughing when I pulled into the driveway," she said. "You and Robert were sitting on the porch, and you were laughing about something. And I sat in the car for a minute before I came in because I could not remember the last time I had heard you laugh like that from a distance." I did not know what to say. "I just wanted you to know I noticed," she said softly. "There are moments in life that you do not recognize as important while they are happening. You only understand them later, turning them over in your memory like smooth stones. That was one of them." A few weeks after that, Robert suggested we have both families over for dinner. Not a formal occasion, just a simple meal, a chance for everyone to be in the same room without the weight of a special occasion pressing down on them. I agreed, then immediately regretted agreeing. I spent 3 days quietly anxious about it. I cleaned the house twice. I changed the menu 4 times. I woke up at 5 in the morning the day before and reorganized the linen closet, which had nothing to do with anything. Robert watched all of this without comment. Finally, the evening before, he said simply, "It is going to be fine." "You do not know that," I told him. "No," he admitted, "but it is going to be fine anyway." I looked at him standing there in my kitchen, our kitchen, I was beginning to think of it, so calm and certain, and I felt a rush of something, not just affection, something deeper, something that had been growing so quietly I had almost not noticed it arriving. The dinner came. Patricia was reserved but polite. David was careful but kind. My daughter filled every silence with cheerful conversation, bless her. Robert's son, who I was meeting for the first time, turned out to be funny and warm and looked at his father with such obvious love that it made my chest ache in a good way. We ate, we talked. The evening moved gently forward. No grand moments, no dramatic breakthroughs. Just people learning how to be in a room together for the first time. At the end of the night, as everyone was leaving, Patricia stopped beside me at the door. She looked at me for a moment, really looked, and then said quietly, "He seems like himself again." She did not say anything else. She did not need to. I stood in the doorway and watched them all drive away into the dark. Behind me, Robert was already doing the dishes, and I went inside and picked up a towel and dried them. Winter came early that year. The first frost arrived in October, coating the grass in a thin silver layer that melted by mid-morning. I stood at the kitchen window watching it disappear, both hands wrapped around my coffee mug, and I thought about how strange and quiet and full my life had become. Full. That was the word that surprised me most. I had not realized how empty it was before. Not unhappy. I want to be clear about that. I had built something real in those 6 years alone, something I was proud of. But there is a difference between a life that is peaceful and a life that is full. I had confused the two for longer than I realized. November brought its own rhythms. Robert had found a part-time position at a local hardware store, 3 mornings a week. He did not need the work financially. It was more that he needed somewhere to be, something to do with his hands. He had always been that way, he told me, a man who needed a purpose to walk toward. I understood that more than he knew. On the mornings he worked, I had the house to myself again, and I noticed something curious. I did not feel relieved the way I once thought I would. Instead, the house felt slightly tilted, off balance, like a table missing one of its legs. I mentioned this to Dorothy over the phone one afternoon. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Helen, do you know what that is?" "What?" I asked. "That," she said, "is what it feels like to miss someone." I sat with that for a while after we hung up. It is a strange thing, learning to miss someone again at 62. When you are young, missing someone is enormous. It fills the whole room. It keeps you up at night and follows you through your days like a second shadow. When you are older, it is quieter, more like a low hum, a gentle awareness of absence. You notice the empty chair, the untouched coffee cup, the particular silence that belongs to a house where someone should be but isn't yet. That kind of missing does not hurt exactly. It just reminds you that you care. And at 62, after everything, being reminded that you still care, that your heart is still capable of that, feels like something close to a gift. Christmas that year was the most unexpected gift of all. We had talked sometime in November about what to do for the holidays. Both of our families had their own traditions, their own expectations. There was potential for complication, schedules and feelings and the quiet politics that come with blended families finding their footing. But somehow it all settled itself gently. David and his family came on Christmas Eve. Robert's son came Christmas morning. Patricia came in the afternoon, staying longer than any of us expected. She and I ended up in the kitchen together for almost an hour, just the two of us, making tea and talking about small things, her work, her daughter who was 7 and obsessed with horses, a funny story about a road trip she had taken the previous summer. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would make a good story at a dinner party. But something between us quietly unlocked that afternoon. Some last bit of careful distance dissolved over tea and the smell of cinnamon from the candle burning on the counter.